All right, guys, so I got a chance to clean all the areas where I was going to be welding, and also cleaned up so I could inspect the cracks and get the exact point of where they end. And I drilled those out, and then I end up kind of shaving them in so I could get my weld in there. And I found more cracks, and it's in a spot where I was shocked that I didn't see any cracks. So that is the left hand rear one that normally cracks as well. So I did find a crack on there. So yeah, let's take a quick peek at them. So this is the worst one. This is the one that I see a lot that's cracked, and it's funny because it follows that curvature around the bolt hole. You can see up on top where I drilled a hole, and then you can see where I kind of grinded it out. And one of the welds, I just drilled the weld out so I can get my weld puddle in there. And it looks like I missed a little spot, so I got to go in, and that one right there, there's a little crack there, so I got to do that one. And it actually comes all the way back up here. So I got to get that cleaned up, and then we have the other one, which is right here, and there is that one crack, which is this is going to be weird. This is almost exactly exactly in the same spot as my car was, which is in that little area. And again, this is the left rear plate that or the mounting bolt for the subframe. And then what I ended up having was the weld right here. I went ahead and drilled that out, and that's going to be welded in place as well. That seemed to be fine. And then here's the other spot, and this is on the driver's side, left hand side. That weld was coming, you could tell. And then this one as well. This one was just barely starting. Once I cleaned all the sealant off of it, I was able to see it. And then also what we'll end up doing here on this side is stitch welding all the way down up until that end right there. Oh, and I failed to mention that I did find a crack right there as I was cleaning everything up as well. This one is the first that I've seen it crack up that high, and the actual plate, which I have it right here. You can see where this sucker's gonna go. That's pretty much right where it's gonna go, and you can see that crack right there. So the plate's not gonna cover that. And I've seen videos and pictures of cracks going all the way up to here, and literally this whole section just coming apart. It's still salvageable, so it's just a matter of I got to clean that up and drill and grind that out, and then and weld it. So now everything is pretty much prepped, ready to be spot welded. So I'm going to go ahead and get started with that. All right, so I got all the little spot welds, or just the welding done for all the cracks, and then I stitch welded the frame right there. So next thing is I just got to go through and clean them all up, and especially in the plates area, so that way flatten them down is what I meant, so that way I can go ahead and start tacking in the plates. So the fun part will begin. All right, so already went through and grinded all the welds where the cracks were at, grinded that smooth so I could put my plates on. I've already went ahead and sprayed weld through primer, on the back plates, and I'm going to go ahead and spray that in the area where I'm going to weld here on the chassis itself, and then I'm going to start tacking and hammering down to get them all welded in. So let's keep trucking on. All right, what I end up doing is on these right here, or on any of the plates, I position the hole where the stud goes through, and I try to get it at center, as much as center as possible. That way, when I get everything going, I don't have to worry about grinding anything out if it's too far forward, too far back, or vice versa. So that's a good way to start. And everything else technically is going to get tacked, and I'm going to have to bang it in to get it to curve to the actual chassis itself. So for the rear ones, it's actually not bad to use an actual wheel stud or wheel bolt. Unfortunately, well, not unfortunately, but fortunate, I have tons of these that I can end up using, and if they get any weld sparks on it, that's good. But this, the beveled part will actually center these plates, the rear plates, on really nice. Alright guys, so all the welding is done here on the Redish plates. The only thing I got left to do here that I can think of at this point is just grind down the or smooth down the welds, the spot welds and stuff like that, where the bushings would normally go. Yeah, it's beer time for me. Tired, I'm hot, and I'm burned in places that we can't discuss. These little metal shards, boy, they do find their way in places where it's no bueno. So, but it is what it is. So got the spot welds and all the edges all nice and smooth. Now what I got to do is I'm just going to throw some etching primer on it and get that to dry off, and then I'm going to start technically working on the vent bar at this point. So let's keep trucking along. All right, so here we are. The plates have been etched, primered, or sprayed with etching primer. So we got all the sections underneath, front and back, and also the side piece back here where I end up stitch welding. So this will stay like this. I still have the welding to do on the vent bar. So what I'll end up doing is once the vent bar is installed, do my primer, the same stuff as I'm doing this, and then I'll go back and add the seam sealer where I end up grinding it down and covering all that up. So that way is as closest to OEM as possible. It won't be a spray-on seam sealer. It'll be one that I just, it's through a caulking gun, but I'll be able to at least cover that up. So yeah, got to keep it protected. That way it doesn't rust through. All right, guys, before starting cutting anything or anything of that sort for the vent bar, a little bit of interior protection had to be taken care of. Check this out. Yep, she's covered. I actually ended up calling my kids over and said, hey, look, your daddy ended up building a fort in a car. So they came over here and had to look. All right, so there are my cutting marks. I have the section here, which is the thicker vent bar, the square tubing is going to fit. And then right here is where I'm going to end up cutting. That way when the vent bar sits down into place, the lip, which is seen here, will fit behind this line right here. And then I'll end up tack welding, stitch welding, tack welding all the way across. This is a riveted vent bar, which could be easily turned into a welded one. You just got to throw these out bigger, so you could have spot welds in the plate there, and that's about it. A little bit a cleaner install, if you ask me. Just that that epoxy stuff, sometimes it's a pain in the butt, and I've seen just huge messes. So let's get cutting. All right, so I got it all cut out, kind of bent up a little bit on the back tab. These actually look pretty good, except for the welds, the factory welds here. You know, they get some of it, but they don't get all of it. So, so I got to take care of that. Add some additional weld there, and then on this side, on that, seems to look pretty good. None of the spot welds on the back are cracked or anything, which is good. So my next step is I'm just gonna have to do what the Vince bar procedure is to slice those down, bang them down, and this one does not come with a plate, so I'll smooth that as best as I can so I can put the Vince bar, because it needs to be flat on that whole surface right there. So and that includes grinding down a little bit of the OEM welds. But yeah, that should be no big deal. It's just a little bit more pain. And here was the reason why the other section was probably cut off before, when I did one before. It's just trying to get a cutter all the way up into that tip to flatten that down. That was the toughest part, but yeah, keep plugging along. All right, so there I went ahead and smoothed those little edges down, made them flat, and then I'll be welding those and also grinding or adding more weld to the open ones. You can see there's a little slot there. I'll go ahead and get that taken care of, grind it all smooth so the Vince bar has a nice, smooth, flat surface to be pressed against, so there's no gaps. So same thing with that one. So I've got the that section there already welded up, grinded down smooth so that so the Vince bar has a nice flat surface to bolt on right where the center where the hole's at. That hole had to be drilled out so that the new bolt will be able to go through and secure it from the bottom and from the top. That hole's already been tapped out as well, which the tap comes with the Vince bar kit if you choose to purchase that. Same thing with this side over here. So next step is to do a little bit more fitment, make sure everything is good, and then I'll primer, edge primer those sections right there are bare metal, and then the same thing with the Vince bar. All right, so here I have the Vince bar and the areas where I'm going to weld. I have the weld through primer, and then I did the etching primer on the bare metal. Just the sections that you won't see again, make sure it's all protected, and the same thing with the chassis itself. So I got my weld through primers in the areas, and then my etching primers. So yeah, I'm just going to do a little bit more cleanup on some areas where I'm going to weld, where it's just the etching primer, and start welding her in. So here we are, all in, welded, and primered. So through get all that pretty much finished up. I got to still do the seam sealer, especially where the tack welds are at. I'll be taking care of that once it's all dry. But the next thing to do is the front section, the front cups. So I'll keep plugging away on that. So the next step is to remove these two brackets here on this one. I've already drilled a hole from underneath the car, which that is technically a pilot hole for that drill bit right there, or actually a hole saw with a pivot pin. And what I'll end up doing is that I'll cut a section out of the front section of the chassis so that I can put those cups in place. This Vince bar kit, it doesn't come with a kit. You have to purchase it separately, but they do have a installation kit, and which includes a tap, some drill bits for the rivets if you do go that route, and the hole saw as well, which is, it's nice because that pivot pin is what makes cutting this section out right here so much more easier. So I'm going to go ahead start cutting those off and drill the holes. So yeah. All right, so I got the cups in place, and what has to be done is this has to be trimmed down, the sound deadening, and it'll fall into place. And then what you have to end up doing, since this is a rivet one, I would have to drill these out and clean the areas up and spot weld them in. And then what I'll end up doing is I'll go around it and do a handful of stitches, that way to make sure that it's in place. The downfall to this is I got some repair work I got to do right there. There's on this one right here, there's a lot of tears in that area right there, so that's going to take me a little bit of time, only because of the little area I have to work in. I don't know if you could see that right here, but there is a handful of little tears right there, right where the welds are at. So those will have to be drilled out, and then I have to grind them down a little bit so I can get some weld puddles in there, and then I'll have to grind everything back down again. So fun. So there I go. I got the hose drilled and finished the little trim out, cut out. So now it's just time to spot weld those in. All right, so got them all welded and smoothed the welds, so that way the vent cups can go up front. And also went ahead and trimmed out my my sound deadening up top and towards the bottom, where I'm going to end up welding and spot welding in. So yeah, I'm going to finish getting that cleaned up, and should have these in here soon. All right, so I got both my cups here. I already have them primered, and same thing with the actual chassis itself. It's primered and weld through primer as well. So gonna go ahead and get these bolted in and start doing my spot welds, and I'll do stitch welds in certain areas that way, to make sure the cup's nice and flush. All right, all done. Got the spot weld grinded down, and went ahead and threw some etching primer on it. So next step is do the seam sealer, let that dry off, and then paint it. I'll be able to do the front caps, the vents bar, and then underneath the chassis. So got the seam sealer on, and pretty much anywhere that I removed the seam sealer, I replaced it or recovered it. Got the back section as well, all the way up to right there, and even on the plates as well. Just try to cover it where most of the seam sealer was. And there's that one right there. Same thing with the front ones as well. And here's the vents bar section. So got those areas where I dug it out, and along underneath there were all those spot welds. Got that all covered up, and back there in those corners as well. All 4 points, and the center ones are done. Not pretty good. Nice undercoating, and got the outside done as well, on the fender and back there as well. And I got a little paint that I got to match the exterior just a tad bit. So I painted the vents bar. All right, guys, this concludes part 2 of the E46 M3 rear subframe repair. The Redish plates and the vents bar are installed, welded, primered, and undercoated and painted. So the next step is the actual studs for the vents bar or for the rear subframe, but that will come at a later point when the assembly is all back together and ready to go back in. So thank you for watching, guys. I appreciate you hanging in there. Like always, like and subscribe, and see you in part 3.